You! You haven't been stealing my mother's money, have you?
Money? Oh, I took it.
Took it? What do you mean? That money was for my mother's hospital fees. Can you give it back? Even if I said anything, I've lost $400 at the slots in these past 2 weeks. Only $400 is left. Your mother is 80, right? It's a waste to spend $6,000 on an old lady with no future. I'll use the rest of the money more meaningfully since I'm healthy. My husband casually admitted to taking my mother's hospital fees and laughed at me as if mocking. A mix of anger, doubt, and regret swirled inside me, making my head feel like it was about to explode. I wanted to divorce him immediately, but he refused to agree to a divorce. I had to find a way to divorce him somehow. A week later, my husband called me. Hey, can you help me out? I'm in trouble.
What? What happened?
I had an accident with a car. I was driving along the river near our house and crashed spectacularly because I wasn't paying attention, rolled down the embankment. They're taking me to the hospital urgently. They say I'll have to stay in the hospital for a while, so could you bring some clothes and stuff to the hospital?
Got it. I'll prepare and head over. Thanks, I appreciate it. My husband seemed to have no guard up against me. Feeling a good opportunity had arisen, I did a mental fist pump and headed to the hospital. I brought you some clothes. How bad are your injuries? Just a broken leg. They say I can leave in about a week. That's good, it wasn't worse. By the way, your mother had paid her hospital bills when she was discharged, right? Bring me some money for mine too. It's a hassle to pay later. Money? You're not worth the treatment costs. This suits you better, doesn't it? Necessary, right? I confronted my husband with something and created a situation where he had no choice but to agree to a divorce. I'm Charlotte. I'm 53 years old, working in an office job, currently living with my husband Lucas. We have a daughter, Mary, who graduated from college 2 years ago and moved out when she found a job. Thus, having fully completed our parenting duties, our life should have been more relaxed, but that's not quite the case. My childhood home is about a 40-minute drive from our house, a distance that's not too far nor too close. Since my father passed away 5 years ago, my mother Emily has been living there alone. My mother is 80 years old this year. It's worrisome for her to be alone, so I visit her after work or on weekends to support her.
Mom, I bought some rice, so I'll leave it here.
We still have rice left. You always say to prepare things early.
Well, that's true. But you don't need to come every week, I'm fine. You have your own household to take care of, don't you?
It's okay. I'm managing everything at home. I'll come again next week, so let me know if you need anything. After stopping by my childhood home after work to drop off the rice and see my mother's face, I quickly leave the house. My stay is always around 3 minutes, leaving my mother slightly exasperated by my hurried visits. As I leave, I hurry back home to prepare dinner. Would it be better to just live together considering how rushed I am? Some might think so, but there are reasons why I don't live with my mother.
You were at your mother's home again? Hurry up and make dinner. I'm starving. Sorry, I'll start preparing right away. Starting now? What time will we eat then? If you can't manage the house because of visiting your mother, then stop going. I can't do that.
I place the supermarket bag next to the sink without facing my husband Lucas in the living room. Feeling his glaring presence behind me, I proceed to prepare dinner. Lucas seems displeased that my visits to my childhood home affect our household chores. However, dinner is rarely more than an hour late, and I keep up with cleaning and laundry. So, it's not that household chores are neglected, he just dislikes me visiting my mother. Lucas becomes irritable and aggressive over things not going his way. He was much gentler when we married, but that side of him is long gone. Is this normal after over 25 years of marriage? With him constantly complaining about my visits, suggesting living together is out of the question. If I even mentioned wanting to live with my mother, it would lead to an uproar. Also, I don't want to put my mother and husband together, which is why I end up visiting her frequently. Mom, I bought the detergent you asked for, but you still have stock, don't you? I'm about to run out of the detergent I'm using. Then I'll have to dip into my stash, so the quantity's gonna decrease, right? And to think you often tell me I restock on rice too early. Well, if we run out of rice, we can just eat something else, so there's no need to prepare so early, is there? It's hard to grasp the difference, but it seems my mom has her own set of rules. She's always been the type to prepare everything ahead of time. I've been influenced by my mom to prepare early, but I can't compete with her.
Hey! I get why you have numbers for taxis and hospitals by the phone, but why lawyers and banks?
Lawyers are needed in case of incidents or accidents, right? And since our money is in the bank, there might be times we need to get in touch, you know? It's all about being prepared for just in case. Just in case, huh? If you worry about every little unlikely scenario, there's no end to it, right? That's not true. There've been times when being prepared for just in case has really paid off, haven't there?
Has there?
Remember, for your elementary school trip, I gave you 2 wallets so you wouldn't lose all your money if one got lost? Sure enough, you lost one.
Oh, right. You told me not to carry all my money in one wallet, but to put only what I needed in a smaller one. I lost that one, but since I had left another wallet in my bag at the inn, I wasn't strapped for cash. Sure, I didn't lose all my money then, but looking back, leaving money behind like that seems questionable.
That's why I told you not to tell any of your classmates about splitting your wallet. Plus, it's not like you run into thieves that easily.
Indeed, my mom's thinking is unique. However, despite her peculiar rules, her thorough preparedness means she seems to have everything she needs for living alone, and she doesn't appear to be inconvenienced by it. Yet, considering her age, I feel it's about time it becomes unsustainable to leave her on her own. Therefore, I understand it's time to propose my husband for living together with my mother, even if there are worries. But I find myself hesitating to bring it up with him. The reason is not just his easily irritable nature, but also his hobby. His hobby is playing slots. Darn it! Freakin' heck! One Sunday, my husband left in the morning and came back past noon. As he opened the door, he stomped down the hall with heavy steps, plopped down on the couch with force, and started muttering loudly to himself. It was clear he had lost at slots and was in a bad mood. Times like these pose a risk of catching the backlash. I was in the kitchen next to the living room, but to avoid being spoken to by my husband, I went to the bathroom even though I didn't need to, and killed time on my phone for about 10 minutes. Arg, this is so annoying. His stress seemed to be particularly high today. My husband was yelling loud enough to be clearly heard all the way to the bathroom. As I played games on my phone, I prayed he wouldn't take his frustration out on something and break it. While he never borrows money for it, he pours almost all of our disposable income into slots. It would be nice if he won at least a little, leaving us with some money in hand, but gambling isn't that kind. Most months, the money he puts in dwindles down to 0. Because of this, our savings are minimal at best. The only saving grace is that he doesn't gamble away money to the point of debt. Still, the thought of a couple in their 50s with virtually no savings as they approach retirement is incredibly worrying. He started playing slots about 30 years ago, before we got married. Initially, he was interested because a favorite American animated movie of his was turned into a slot machine theme. However, it was purely out of love for the animation, and he played slots casually, without much concern for winning or losing, truly just as a hobby. As various animations were turned into slot machines over the years, he continued playing, but I never worried too much since he wasn't spending a lot of money on it while we were dating. However, things started to change gradually after we got married and our daughter Mary was born. Hey, slots again? Haven't you been going too often lately? Well, I won big last time, didn't I? So, I thought I might have a good chance this time too. It felt like a similar flow. Maybe if I had continued a bit longer, I would have won.
You only spend about $100 a month, and hitting the jackpot is rare, right? I get that you had a good experience, but don't increase the frequency. You've already spent $400 on slots this month. We have Mary now, so please be more careful.
Sorry. I'll be careful. My husband scratched his head in embarrassment and chuckled sheepishly. At that moment, I thought he would cut back on slots soon, so I didn't push too hard. True to his word, he stopped going to the slots and started working harder than ever for our daughter. He also helped with childcare and was a great dad. However, as he began to work harder, he started coming home later. You're working hard, which is great, but please take care of yourself. Oh, yeah. I know. Don't worry.
Appreciating his efforts for the family, I started putting more effort into dinner than before. He always said the food was delicious, but when I looked at his face during those times, his eyes were wandering. He was keeping something from me. As his wife, I could tell. And it didn't take long for his secret to come out.
Is that Lucas over there?
One Sunday, as I was out shopping for dinner and waiting at a crosswalk, I saw my husband coming out of a slot parlor. He said he was going out to lunch with a friend today. Wondering if he had been dragged there reluctantly, I didn't cross the street even when the signal turned green, instead watching him from a distance. But the friend I imagined never showed up, and he started walking home. Realizing my husband had been secretly visiting the slot parlor, I let out a sigh. However, asking him to suddenly quit a hobby he's had for so long seemed too harsh, so I thought a stern warning would suffice.
Hey, we're a bit tight this month. Can you give me a little extra pocket money?
No.
It'll just go to slots immediately. Eh? You knew? Yes, I did. So, no extra pocket money. You can keep playing slots if you like, but please stay within your allowance.
My husband chuckled sheepishly and scratched his head. Knowing I wasn't angry about him secretly going to the slot parlor and that he could continue as long as it was within his pocket money, he didn't push any further for extra cash and easily backed down. With my permission, my husband started going to the slots without hiding it. I thought that was the case, but as our daughter grew older and needed less care through elementary and middle school, the frequency of his visits to the slot parlors increased. I understand that he needs to blow off some steam, and I have no complaints as long as he enjoys it within his allowance. However, it was clear that the frequency of his visits to the slot parlors was not something that could be covered by his allowance alone. But the reason for this soon became clear.
Hey! You took money from my wallet, didn't you? $200. A little bit should be fine, right? There's no way I can win within the range of my allowance.
My husband retorted with a sullen look on his face. The husband I knew used to enjoy playing slots for the sake of it, not caring much about winning or losing, but it seems his fixation on winning or losing has emerged. This was a bad turn of events. To prevent my money from being taken, I created about 5 hiding spots for my wallet around the house and changed the hiding spot every day. It's a sad state of affairs to have to guard against a thief inside the house. However, this meant my husband could no longer get his hands on money, so he had to stick to playing slots within the limits of his allowance. That was supposed to be the case, but my husband easily crossed the line.
Hey! You withdrew money from our savings account, didn't you? And $1,000 at that. I should be allowed to go to the slots. Don't make a fuss over just $1,000.
Now, whenever I bring up the subject of slots, my husband yells back in anger. Moreover, not just about slots, but he also gets irritated quickly over trivial things if they don't go his way.
Hey! Where did you put the TV remote? What? It's right there on the sofa you're sitting on. Why is the remote here? It should always be here. On this table.
My husband grabbed the remote next to him and slammed it on the table twice. It seems he got irritated because the remote wasn't in the place he expected it to be. Just because the remote was on the sofa, he glared at me as if he had found his mortal enemy. If I talked back, it felt like a fist could fly at me any moment.
All right, I'll be more careful next time, okay?
I tried to sound nonchalant to hide my fear from my husband and quickly, yet calmly, made my escape from the living room. Taking refuge in the bathroom, I sat on the toilet seat and stared at the door. My husband had started using our household money for slots, and the fear of being hit over something as minor as a remote control made it impossible for me to speak up. Moreover, with my husband complaining even about me visiting my parents, there's no way I could propose living with my mother. Over the past few years, the thought of divorce has flickered through my mind more times than I can count. But if I were to mention divorce, I have no idea what my husband would say or do. He has become a symbol of fear for me, an entity I cannot seem to defy. Yet, I can't leave my mother alone, so I have to propose living together. I've been caught in a vice, my mental health slowly eroding. Then, one day, when I felt stuck and unable to move, the situation took a turn for the worse.
Mom, are you okay?
I'm fine. The hospital just made a big fuss over nothing.
That's why I told you to let me do the shopping.
I'm sorry. I'll rely on you more from now on. Seeing my mother looking more lively than I expected on the hospital bed, I felt relieved. She had gone out shopping on her own, fell, and broke her leg. She would need to be hospitalized for about a month, but it seems she will be able to walk fine afterward. With my mom needing to be hospitalized for a month, it's necessary for me to visit her for support, and it might be a good idea to occasionally check on our family home too. When I got home, I cautiously brought this up with my husband. Mom broke her leg and needs to be hospitalized for a month. So, I want to visit her in the hospital. Plus, with the family home being empty for a month, I'd like to check on it from time to time. It'd be good to air it out, and a bit of cleaning wouldn't hurt, right? You know, considering how unsafe things have gotten lately. I slowly spoke, glancing at my husband's expression. Knowing he's been displeased with me just visiting the family home before, I braced for him to loudly object to my visiting both the hospital and our family home over a month. I tensed up, preparing for his shouting, but his response was unexpectedly gentle.
She's gonna be able to walk again, right? That's great. You go to the hospital. Handling both on your own would be tough, wouldn't it? I'll take care of checking on the family home. Just let me know what needs to be done.
His words made me relax all at once, my body going soft like jelly. Even towards my hospitalized mom, my husband couldn't show his previously cold behavior. It felt like the kind husband I knew had come back. Following that, I began visiting my mom at the hospital, and my husband would check on the family home. Sometimes, I'd go to the family home, and he'd visit the hospital.
What does Lucas talk about when he visits? Well, mostly about the house. Like, if there are any rooms I shouldn't enter, or anything I shouldn't touch.
Though I was worried, it seemed the relationship between my husband and my mom was good. This made me think it might be a good time to suggest living together once my mom was discharged. A month after my mom's hospitalization, she was set to be discharged.
You're getting discharged soon. I can finally go home. Oh, right. I'll need to pay the hospital bills when I'm discharged. Can you bring the money from home? Hospital bills can be quite expensive, you know? That's why I've kept $6,000 in cash at home for such occasions. Keeping that much cash at home is risky. At least bring it to the hospital.
But having it at home like this means I can easily pay it off when I'm discharged. Dealing with transfers and all that later would be a hassle, wouldn't it? You want me to drag my feet to the bank?
All right. Where is it?
My mom's thinking was indeed unique. I decided to pick up the hospital fee from our family home on my way back from the hospital.
What? Where's the cash?
When I opened the drawer my mother had told me about, the cash was nowhere to be found. Thinking I might have gotten the location wrong, I searched nearby, but still, no money appeared.
Could it have been a burglary?
I panicked for a moment at the thought of a break-in, but looking around, there were no signs of the room being ransacked. My husband and I had been taking turns staying at the family home, and he never mentioned any signs of a break-in. The house hadn't been disturbed, yet the cash was cleanly gone. An unwelcome thought began to form in my mind. If what I was imagining had happened, it was unforgivable. Although not yet confirmed, my anger was already simmering. I needed to confront my husband to verify the facts.
Look, if I'm wrong, you can yell all you want. But you didn't take Mom's money, did you? Money? Oh, I took it. Took it? What do you mean? That was for Mom's hospital bills. Can you give it back? Even if you say that, I've lost down to just $400 at slots in the past couple of weeks. Your mom is 80, right? It's a waste to leave $6,000 for an old lady with no future. I'll put the remaining money to good use.
My husband casually admitted to taking the money, laughing at me as if I were foolish. His easy admission of theft mixed my anger, confusion, and regret into a tumultuous whirl, nearly crashing my thoughts. I needed to calmly untangle this, one step at a time.
You didn't go checking on the family home or visit Mom at the hospital just to take money, did you?
Yeah, I did. Who would bother with such tedious tasks if it didn't pay? There's no money left in this house for slots. I was hoping to find even a little cash, and then I stumbled upon $6,000. It's dangerous to leave such a large sum at home in these unsafe times. What he said wasn't wrong. But one wouldn't expect a family member to be a thief. Had my husband been asking Mom about rooms she didn't want him to enter or things she didn't want him to touch, just to look for places where valuable items or cash might be hidden? Finding the checkbook wouldn't have been as easy for him, but discovering cash must have delighted him. Imagining my husband's joy at finding the cash made me start to feel intense anger towards him. Above all, I couldn't forgive him for speaking so dismissively about my mother.
We're getting a divorce.
My anger reached its peak, blowing away the fear I had felt towards my husband, and I blurted out the demand for divorce. The words came out in a rush, and I surprised myself, momentarily showing a startled expression. My husband didn't miss that fleeting expression of mine and maintained his assertive demeanor. Divorce? For what reason? Slots?
Sure, gambling can be grounds for divorce, but that's usually when it leads to significant debt that disrupts living. I haven't made any debts through slots, and I haven't touched the monthly living expenses, so I wonder if divorce would be granted? Is it because I took the money? But even that, in a family relationship, taking money wouldn't be considered a crime, right? I saw something like that in a video online. The law doesn't interfere with family matters.
My husband smirked triumphantly as he looked at me. There is a way to divorce my husband. But in the current situation, I just can't seem to make the final move. Tears welled up in my eyes from frustration.
Feeling bitter? Why don't you say something back then?
Thinking that speaking up would make my tears fall, I didn't want to show my husband me crying, so I ran out of the house. Feeling an overwhelming sense of defeat, I sought refuge at my parents' house. A week after leaving, I was staying with my recently discharged mother at our family home. There was no contact from my husband. He probably thinks that if he leaves me alone, I'll eventually break and come back. But I have no intention of returning home, and I haven't given up on getting a divorce yet. I've already told my mother about what happened that day, and she supports my decision to divorce. Regarding the $6,000 my husband stole, my mother said it was partly her fault for keeping the money at home and that I shouldn't worry about getting it back. However, I couldn't let it go and insisted on returning the money to her. Ideally, my husband should be the one to return it, but receiving money from him would only complicate things for me, so I've also refrained from contacting him. However, with neither of us reaching out, the situation has stagnated over the week. Feeling stuck and unable to make the next move, I was at my wit's end when suddenly my husband called, and the situation took a turn.
Hey, I need a bit of help. I'm in trouble.
After a week, this is how you call. What's going on?
I got into a car accident. I was driving along the river near our house, got distracted, and spectacularly crashed, rolling down the embankment. Got rushed to the hospital. Looks like I'll be hospitalized for a while and need you to bring some clothes and stuff to the hospital.
Despite wanting to divorce him, I naturally worried about him since it involved his life. But since he sounded upbeat on the phone, it seemed it wasn't a life-threatening accident. This was an opportunity one couldn't miss.
All right. I'll get ready and head over. Thanks, I appreciate it.
Since he initiated the call, it seemed he wasn't wary of me at all. I mentally celebrated the good turn of events and headed to the hospital.
I brought you some clothes. How's the injury? Just broke my leg like your mom. But I should be out in about a week. That's good, could have been worse. Speaking of which, your mom paid her hospital bills when she was discharged, right? Do the same for me when I'm out. I hate dealing with payments later.
Money? Treatment for you seems like a waste. This suits you better, doesn't it? I smirked, just like my husband had a week ago, and handed him the divorce papers.
What? You still haven't given up on divorce? I told you I'm not agreeing to it.
What if I said I'm considering reporting you? Huh? Report?
About your mom's money? Like I said before, the law doesn't interfere with family matters. That's something you learned from some internet video, right? The net is full of misinformation and incomplete explanations, so be careful from now on. Huh? What do you mean? What you did is outright theft. No, that makes no sense. Theft within a family isn't charged. I'm not a legal expert, but I'm sure there are cases like that. However, that family relationship thing doesn't apply if you're not direct blood relatives. No way! The video showed a daughter-in-law not being charged for stealing from her mother-in-law. I don't know what video you watched or its setup, but was the daughter-in-law and mother-in-law living together in it? Maybe they were, maybe not. I forget if it's 6 degrees or 3, but if they were living together, then you're right, the law doesn't interfere, and it falls under the familial theft exemption. So, in my case, since we're not living together?
Simply put, it's theft. Until now, he thought he was in a legal gray area, barely safe, but realizing he's completely out, his expression turned desperate, sweat beading on his forehead, eyes darting around. He was desperately thinking of a way to get back to that barely safe line. Likewise, as he had extracted the location of the money from my mother, he was looking for hints from me on how to escape this situation.
Why do you know so much about theft? I work in administration, right? That includes accounting. Once, when the numbers wouldn't add up, we thought it might be a loss or theft, causing a bit of a stir. It turned out to be a mistake, but I researched how to handle accounting for lost or stolen items, just in case. That's when I learned about handling theft in everyday life, just in case. Preparing for such uncertain events? It's my mother's influence to prepare for any eventuality.
He might be looking for a way out in our conversation, but having already cornered him, I confidently answered his questions. As our conversation progressed, my husband suddenly smirked, as if he'd thought of a good escape route.
I told you I took the money, but it's not like you have any evidence that makes it impossible for me to deny it, right? So, if you report me to the police, I just need to stick to my story. Your word alone won't be enough for the police to do anything, right?
This was the move I hadn't been able to make until now. Without evidence, even if I reported him, there was a chance the police would only listen and not act. However, I had already obtained that evidence.
I've been recording our entire conversation with an app on my phone. Eh? So then? Thanks for blabbering about stealing my mom's money.
I pulled out my smartphone from my breast pocket, showing him the screen displaying wreck, and the already pale complexion of my husband, due to blood loss from the accident, turned even paler. A week ago, he had confidently confessed to his crime, thinking he wouldn't be charged with theft. But at that time, I wasn't prepared, so I couldn't record his words, and I failed to obtain evidence of the theft. Later, by preparing a recording app and getting him to talk about the theft again, I could resolve the issue. However, if he realized I was trying to get him to talk about the theft by contacting him, he might never speak of it again. So, I decided it was best to wait for him to contact me and bring up the topic of theft again when his guard was down, without reaching out from my end. I prepared the divorce papers in anticipation of creating a flow of conversation about the theft. Over the week, I was anxious he might learn some information and offer to return the money. If he offered to return the money, he could claim he had borrowed it, not stolen it, and escape punishment. For me, it was better not to get the money back. Would you consider divorcing me? If you agree to divorce, I won't report you.
Fine. I'll divorce.
By weighing divorce against being reported, my husband chose to divorce. With the plan working, I spoke to my husband with a smile.
Then, fill out these divorce papers. I'll bring you new clothes in 3 days and collect them then.
Leaving the hospital room, I felt refreshed, as if I were a patient who had just been discharged. Afterward, my husband and I divorced. Given he had poured our savings into slots, there wasn't much to divide, so the divorce proceeded smoothly. After the divorce, my ex-husband apparently tried to quit slots, the trigger for our divorce. When I heard this, I thought he would quickly give up, considering he must have learned his lesson from this ordeal. Surely, he must have thought the same. However, he had stolen money for slots, a characteristic of gambling addiction. Stealing money for gambling appears to be one of the characteristics of gambling addiction. Apparently, my ex-husband was on the verge of developing a gambling addiction. The stress from the divorce seemed to have accelerated his gambling addiction. Now, without playing slots, he seems to become more irritable than before, to the point where he has even started borrowing money for his gambling habit. After borrowing from everywhere he could, my ex-husband eventually tried to borrow money from our daughter. Of course, our daughter refused him. With nowhere left to borrow from, my ex-husband continues to work while slowly paying off his gambling debts, still undeterred from playing slots. Clearly, he has lost both money and relationships due to gambling, but it seems the situation is only going to get worse. I've started living with my mother at our family home, and our daughter occasionally comes to visit. I'm working, so there are no issues with my livelihood. Without the need to live in fear of my ex-husband anymore, every day feels enjoyable and fulfilling.